Punctures are a cyclist's worst nightmare, and that's probably one of the reasons why we've seen an increase in the popularity of tubeless tyres. They are less likely to puncture than a clincher tyre with a tube inside it. However, they can still puncture, therefore it's quite important that we know how to repair one. And there's something along the lines of Sod's Law, isn't there, that if you don't know how to repair a puncture or if you don't have the kit to do it, you're more likely to get a puncture on that occasion. Or maybe that's just my superstitions. Before things get messy and sealant goes everywhere, just a quick reminder, if you want to support the channel, we'd love it if you gave this video a like, and if you're not yet a subscriber, then click on the globe. Well, let's have a look and imagine the worst case scenario that we do have a puncture. You're gonna have to use your imagination with me for this one. But first of all, you've obviously got to locate where that hole is. You might well hear the hissing noise, but as you start to look closer at your tyre, if you've been running tubeless for a while, you might notice lots of other small nicks that have already sealed themselves, because if the sealant inside is doing its job, you shouldn't notice those smaller potential holes. But on this occasion, we're imagining that it's a big enough hole that's caused the pressure to decrease, and as a result, you've noticed it. So you'll probably be able to hopefully see some sealant coming out, or at least hear the noise. And once you've located your hole, you then want to tip your tyre around so that the hole is at the bottom, and therefore that's going to allow gravity to help the sealant move to that area and hopefully do its job, and you can crack on the road. You might need to put a bit more air in once it's sealed, but if you've got that quickly, you might not even have to do that. However, we're going to pretend today that that has not happened, and therefore we're going to require some puncture repair skills and some kit. Don't worry though, it's not that technical, as long as you have the required kit and the required skills, both of which I am slightly lacking. I'm not afraid to admit it. So I'm going to bring in some help. Hello. I have Owen, our resident mechanic. We've borrowed him from GMBN today. Thank you, Owen. You've come with tools and knowledge and experience of repairing tubeless flats. So I'm just going to hand it over to you, because I gather it gets a bit messy as well.
Can get messy, should get messy in a way, because your sealant should be liquid, and if it's not kind of floating around, and maybe it's why you've got punctures, you haven't topped up sealant, which you need to do probably once a month, depending on where you are, it can get a bit messy. Okay,
but obviously here's one we've prepared earlier.
No, we were just riding along and a screw just fell into the tyre.
The screw just naturally fell in. Yeah. Okay, so talk me and our viewers through this.
Super, so first thing is that your sealant's got loads of bits in, and hopefully those bits can what's the word?
Work their way into the hole.
Yeah,
I mean, that's lots of
perfect.
words, but...
that word works perfectly, so we'll use that. Coagulates is the word I was searching for, but didn't get. Around the object or the hole. So sometimes if it's just a small hole, we've got quite a large screw. So yeah, that's not going to go around in your frame without damaging your frame. If it's relatively small and the sealant is around it and you're not losing loads of pressure, to be honest, I'd just leave it in there, because it's probably sealing. Like if it's a thorn, you can keep it in there. If it's a screw like this, we've got to get rid of it. But before we take it out, this has still got quite a lot of pressure in it. So the screw is doing a good job of holding the sealant and air inside. What we want to do is make sure we've got the right tools to fix it. And there's quite a few different ones out there. So there's some kind of little plugs that you can get. That one's a relatively big plug. And essentially you've got a brass tip and then a small kind of rubber-edged sort of back section on there. The barb tip goes all the way into the tyre, and then as you pull the tool away, the rubbery tip fills the hole in the tyre and works with your sealant to seal it all up. Other options, which like we've got here, is a really similar setup, but the kind of worms and plugs are separate. So we're going to use one of these, because we just borrowed that off somebody's bike. And yeah, we've got a kind of little tool here, and you've got these worms, and you kind of tag them together, pierce the hole, twist it around a couple of times so it stays in, pull the tool out, and it should magically seal the tyre. Without any mess.
I mean, no pressure, because we can only do this once, really, without making.
No, we've got four other goes.
Tell people. We don't want sealant everywhere 4 times.
Okay, cool. Let's begin. What I'm going to do before I carry on with that is arm my little plug tool, and essentially we're going to plug that in when we've got a hole, and then we'll twist it around. So
what happens if the hole is not it's too small for that to go in?
So very good point. With this set here, which is a part tool one, we've just got one set of worms, but you can get worms, these little plugs here, in different thicknesses. So this one's, I think, a 2.5, but you can get 3mm ones, you can get 1.5 ones.
So you should keep your selection on
and they all kind of wrap on a similar sticky sheet. So if you get a pack, often you'll get all the 6 mils and you'll get all the 3 mils or all the 1.5. So you can kind of like mix and match. Yeah. Or the sort of like plug-in-one systems, you just have often a large plug and a smaller plug, and you can get cracking with those. Okay, so we've got our tool ready. We've got screw remove.
Is this where I take a step back?
No, it should arc slightly over my shoulder, but I'm going to be really quick with my thumb and cover up the hole.
Watch closely.
So, yeah. Okay, I'll just try and pull it out.
Oh, where's all that sealant?
So I've covered the hole from where the screw was with my finger because we don't want to lose air. It doesn't matter if it completely goes down, but the less pumping with a hand pump we've got to do, the better, or CO2. So we've got the plug armed, ready to go, and I just want to kind of jab it in as soon as I see the hole. Okay, so the plug is in there, and we can see some sealant coming out.
Oh, the sealant's appeared.
I know,
now.
sealant's magically appeared. Sometimes it'll do that because, sometimes it might not.
Do we need to then turn it upside down for a moment?
Exactly that, yeah. So just by turning it upside down, that means all the liquid will come back down here and hopefully work with that plug to fix it. And then it will seal. And
we've not lost too much, eh?
No, exactly. As quick as you can kind of get a finger, or some of the plug systems actually have a sort of spike shape that you can wedge in until you get all your tools prepared, so you don't lose more air.
Okay.
But yeah, again, another advantage of like a mini pump or something like that is you can just top up versus CO2. But essentially, this should be. He says, hopefully.
I mean, this is just a demonstration here, and usually it doesn't do this.
No.
Apparently.
Normally it seals really quickly. But we were trying to use a really big plug material in a really small tyre, so maybe...
Is there anything in particular, so tool-wise, you literally just need the plug and a worm?
Yeah, basically, that's it.
That is it.
And some sort of like elbow grease, I guess, to stab it in, because it does take a lot to force it in.
Yeah, it looks harder than I thought.
Yeah, it does. It takes a lot to force it in, even with these, like the smaller plug styles. They've got a sharpened tip, so it kind of goes in a little bit easier. And because they're effectively like sort of self-extracting from the tool, they already kind of stay in there. So sometimes they act a little bit quicker. But I guess it gives you less. The worms give you kind of more options if you have like a bigger slash.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well, we'll ignore the fact that we can hear a little bit of hissing going on under the table.
That's just me under pressure.
And if that doesn't work, then we move on to Plan B and Plan C, which I feel I'm maybe just qualified enough to cover.
Qualified.
So, Owen, I will say thank you very much, and you can take your sealant and all your worms, and off you go. Thank you.
I'll get my coat.
Well, thanks to Owen. Now, he did mention that obviously a plug isn't always going to work. If the hole is too big, then you're going to have to think again. And this is where things could get messy, but I'm afraid for the sake of the set, I'm not actually going to slash a big hole in this tyre right now. But basically, you need to make sure once you've identified the slash, which I imagine wouldn't be too difficult, you then got to clean the inside of the tyre and dry it. So if you're out on a ride, this might not be that easy. And then you're going to use a specific patch for repairing, if you have one with you, hopefully. Otherwise, I'm running out of points to help you on this one. So basically make sure it's clean and dry, and then you follow the instructions on the patch. You need to make sure that's adhered, and you probably need to give it a bit of time to fully stick before you can re-inflate your tyre. And then hopefully, eventually, you're not too cold, you can get back on the road. On to Plan C. Yes, we're starting to run out of ideas. For this one, really hope that you've packed a spare inner tube into your emergency repairs kit, because that is required. So you're going to have to, for this, if your plugging attempt or your patching attempt hasn't worked, it's time to actually remove the tyre. So you're going to have to get it off its seating, and then make sure that you check for any debris inside, so giving it a little bit of a wipe and getting rid of any excess sealant. I warn you, this is probably also going to be a really messy affair. And then hopefully once you've made sure it's clean, you're going to have to assess that hole and whether it still is going to need some sort of patch over it, because your inner tube's going to do a fairly decent job, but obviously not if you've got a gaping hole. Now, for a patch on this, it doesn't need to be quite as secure or accurate as one of these patches we talked about earlier, and it doesn't necessarily need to be dry, as long as it's going to stay in place. And you can even improvise with a gel wrapper or something similar. It might be a bit harder in road tyres, but something that can basically block up the hole enough for you to get home and to keep your inner tube from being damaged. And remember, you're going to have to remove the tubeless valve core, the retaining nut, and the O-ring in order to be able to insert your inner tube. And then the tricky part, or just the physically hard part, is actually trying to get the tyre back on over your inner tube, as Tubeless tyres tend to be extra tight, obviously, because they've got to keep that sealant in, and it can just involve quite a lot of brute force. So you might have to be patient or get a second pair of hands if you're that lucky. And then it's the moment of truth when you pump up your inner and hope that that's going to hold to get you home, because I'm afraid to say, I am all out of other ideas to suggest, and if you're watching this in an emergency on YouTube, then I really hope that you've managed to fix it enough to get home. If there's any other suggestions you guys have for repairing a tubeless flat that I haven't covered, or Owen, my helper, hasn't covered, then do let us know. I mean, I've learned a little bit from Owen's help, and hopefully you guys have too. But anyway, let's fingers crossed, no punctures, happy cycling.